Welcome back to The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. In the studio with me this time is State Representative Tom Morrison. Tom Morrison and I served together while I was down in Springfield too. He's been a long-standing conservative down there, really good on the issues, great on the topics, and he's here today to talk about kind of the process. I mean, we talk a lot about policy, but believe it or not, the process of getting this legislation passes matters a lot. And specifically, we're going to start out by talking about how the Safety Act, which you've heard so much about in recent days, how that actually came to be. So Tom Morrison, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is terrific. So the Safety Act, which was one of the final bills that passed through the state legislature with the General Assembly, previous to the one right now.
Right.
So give us a little sense of what was going on at that time. How do you think the deal came about? Because usually things that are passed in the middle of the night are done with some sort of deal. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that day and what was going on.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, to your point about the General Assembly. So what we mean when we say General Assembly is every 2 years you have a new group of representatives, a new group of senators who get sworn in.
Yes.
The process restarts at that point. They all take the oath of office to serve for 2 years, and then on you go. So what we're talking about is the lame duck session of the 101st General Assembly. And there's all kinds of interesting things that were happening then because everybody knows the name Mike Madigan. Well, Mike Madigan was still attempting to rebuild a coalition to get reelected Speaker of the House for the, what would that have been,
Yes,
the 18th or 19th time?
So by now he's indicted.
Right, correct.
Right? He's been maneuvering to possibly hold on to his speakership. He's already been the longest serving speaker in the entire history of the country.
Right.
And looks like he's going to go for it again. He had just hit 50 years in office as well.
As a state representative.
As a state
and remember,
representative.
so it's the state representatives who vote for the Speaker of the House.
Yes.
It's not
Okay.
based on longevity or anything like that. And so with all of the political problems that Mike Madigan had himself, political and legal problems, but also his members, particularly his suburban members, were getting a lot of heat from voters asking, why do you you're my state representative, why do you keep reelecting Mike Madigan as Speaker of the House? Okay, so it takes a simple majority of the reps to vote for a new speaker. And so that's kind of the context is what we were looking at. And back in early December, the Black Caucus was the first major block of lawmakers that came out and said, we are going to support Mike Madigan for another term as Speaker of the House. So that's a month before the Safety Act actually came up for a vote.
But the Safety Act was one of, I think, 4 pieces of legislation that the Black Caucus had come out with in late fall of 2021.
No, 2020. And again,
2020, late fall of 2020, during the election season, they came out with 4 initiatives that they wanted passed, and they knew when they met with Mike Madigan in December that was their agenda. He knew that was agenda, and that had to have been part of what was going on when this passed in the dark of the night.
For sure. And then the other interesting thing is, of course, we're talking about 2020.
Yes.
The summer of George Floyd.
Yes.
All the riots, all of the civil unrest. And then you had COVID also because we were not meeting in the Illinois State Capitol. We were meeting off-site at the Bank of Springfield Center, which was sort of like the All-State Arena of Springfield. It's a moderately sized stadium, but that's where we were holding our legislative session for distancing protocols and stuff like that. And it's important because when you're on the actual House floor, it's a sloped floor. The desks are arranged in a semicircle. You can really see what's going on. You can see who's talking to whom. You can see which staff people are around. It's very easy. When you're at the Bank of Springfield Center, on that floor, it's on one level plane. It's a massive area, and you really can't see what's happening, who's talking to whom, et cetera. So all of that all of that are pieces of what happened with the Safety Act. So the other thing, a lot of your viewers or listeners know about lame duck session. So what is lame duck session? So this is the time where we're meeting to vote on legislation, but it's after an election. Okay, so you have a number of lawmakers who either lost their election, maybe they're not seeking re-election, maybe they're just, whatever. They're departing in some way, and so they're not going to face voters again. At least some of them are not going to face
and
voters
some
again.
of them are like, hey, now I'm in my 8th year and I just won handily, so I can basically do whatever I want.
Right. Yeah. Voters will forget whatever I
Right.
do because
Yeah.
I'm not going to face them for
That's
another
right.
2 years. Okay. So that's lame
right.
duck session. And that's when you often see some of the most controversial pieces of legislation. And this certainly fits that bill.
So the Safety Act was, I think, the last bill to pass out of the House, and it passed at about, I think, 5:30 in the morning or something like that.
So let's clarify
Okay,
that.
let's clarify
too.
that.
Okay. So the new General Assembly gets sworn in on the second Wednesday of January. So that would have been, I guess, Wednesday, January 13th at noon.
Okay.
Like I said, everything resets. The new lawmakers are sworn in. You elect a new speaker, potentially. Everything resets. So it truly was the 11th hour to pass anything. And this was the last bill that passed the House. So with such
Yes, I'm looking at the ILGA website for that bill. Sure enough, it passed on January 13th.
Yeah, that's right. So we're talking about the final minutes
Yep.
of Mike Madigan's time as House Speaker.
Yep.
Because once noon hits, he's a state representative, but he's not going to get reelected Speaker. So, this is still the opportunity where the Speaker can put forward a bill or just absolutely put a brick on a bill. The Speaker has that power to say, no, we're not going to, I don't care if there's 100 co-sponsors on this bill. We're not going to vote on this bill. He could have done that with the Safety Act. But I think it's at least worthy of consideration that, again, speculation, but that this was some kind of a deal between the Black Caucus and Madigan. I think it's fair to at least speculate that might have been what brought this forward. Because again, at noon, Madigan's no longer Speaker, and you have to reset everything.
Yep.
So back to this bill. So a lot of moving parts. A lot of bills might be 3 or 5 pages long. This one was over 700 pages. Okay, we're talking about major
754 to be exact.
Okay.
People have counted. Yes.
And it's very confusing because you have multiple people writing the bill. It's not just the chief sponsor who's writing this bill. You have lobbyists involved. You have multiple staff members involved, different lawmakers involved. Who knows who else? But that means that the public is not seeing it until the very last moment. And not even the lawmakers are seeing it until the very moment that they have to debate and vote on it.
Well, let's pause right there because we're going to stop here for a moment and we're going to get on the line a former state representative, John Cabello. This was also the last vote that he took as a sitting state rep. Now, John will be coming back to the State House. He won his primary. He has no opposition in the general election. He is a police officer, and the audience needs to hear from him his perspective on this bill at that time, too. So we're going to pause here. We're going to get him on the line, and Tom and I will be putting on headphones for this part. Okay, we are welcoming onto the program John Cabello. He is a former state representative. He is up for election again, though. He's winning back his seat into the General Assembly. John, you're also a police officer. And Tom and I just left off before we brought you on to the conversation with the way that the Safety Act was going down on the floor and the vote. And Tom left off with the fact that there were a lot of lobbyists involved, a lot of people behind the scenes involved in writing this bill.
And not the lawmaker.
Not the lawmakers, right? And
so there were committee meetings. You have to have committee meetings in both the House and the Senate, subject matter meetings, and so those did take place. But with so many different moving parts and commitments, oh yes, if we actually put this in the final bill, we'll come back and bring it to committee. That way, people can testify either for or against it. You have that opportunity for the public to weigh in on a bill in committee. Once that bill hits the floor, that's it. It's going to be voted on.
So in this case, I'm sure, John, that they brought you in, the Black Caucus brought you in and wanted your expertise since you were, I think, the only sitting police officer in the General Assembly at that time?
They did not. And believe it or not, neither.
No. Okay, all right.
Believe it or not, neither did our side of the aisle. So before, I was the lead negotiator on the first police reforms bill. And for some reason, they didn't even have me in any of the discussions on our side of the aisle as well.
Okay, so let's go on to this. They're in debate. They're in the middle of the debate. What happens in the debate?
Let's back up a little bit. So when you said that the one version passed at 5 a.m, that was the Senate version, okay? So the other thing that happens with session, and not just this year or this session, but they'll often push things back to the very final hours or days or weeks, and then just keep us on the floor for hours and hours and hours on end. And it's very difficult to stay lucid, to know what's really going on. It just wears you out. And I think that's by design, because we start in January. There's no reason why there has to be this delay until the very end of session to push these bills forward. But it does help to take away transparency and the public's opportunity to weigh in on some of these issues by waiting until the last moment. So with this particular
in the House,
bill,
you vote at what, 3 a.m.?
well, they had kept us there on the floor. John, do you recall? It wasn't until about 4 a.m. we were voting on bills. The previous day,
And then
the 12th, all through the day, all through the afternoon, all through the evening, past midnight till 4 a.m. Then the speaker says, okay, everybody go back to your hotels, go get some rest, and be back here at 8 a.m.
Yep.
So,
yep. And it's throughout this whole process, there's one group that, besides law enforcement, should have really had a key role in coming up with some of the legislation that was passed, and that is the victims. And every time that I was in Jude Crim or any other committee like Restorative Justice, they never once would bring in victims of crime. And so I would always constantly ask, especially when Elaine Necris was in charge of the Jude Crim, where are the victims? Why don't you have the victims come in and talk about what they actually went through? Or what, if they lost a family member, why don't you let these folks come in and tell you how they feel about your legislation that you want to get passed? And they refuse, absolutely refuse to have any of the victims ever come in.
yeah.
So when it came to debate on the House floor, what were their arguments for this?
So we actually had a strategy, first of all.
Okay.
We had a strategy in that we came up with. We had a line of speakers that we were going to start with. One of our members jumped in before, kind of riled everybody up. They switched it over to the Democratic side, and then it was I was supposed to be the next speaker, and they went to Andre Tapetti, who then called the question, which stops debate, stops everything, and goes for a vote.
So how many speakers did they have total on both sides?
If I recall correctly, there were 5.
I believe there were 2 on our side. So Patrick Windhorst is a state rep from Southern Illinois. He is a former prosecutor. State's attorney,
Yep.
Thank you. So we had 2 on our side speak, and then we had the chief sponsor of the bill, Rep. Slaughter. I don't remember who else spoke on that side. But the bottom line is the
That's
debate was only about 15 minutes. So they brought the bill up for consideration.
Nobody knows that.
Yeah,
Nobody knows
probably
that.
at 10:30 in the morning, I want to say, and then our side went to caucus. So we, asked the speaker to put a pause on the proceedings until we had an opportunity to meet as Republican lawmakers to talk about strategy and stuff like that. But by the time we came back, debate started around 11 a.m. and debate was cut off around 11:15. So that's 700 plus page bill. And again, so there would have been opportunity for Representative Cabello to speak or other people to speak. But I think they were under that deadline of noon, so they were going to jam it through no matter what. And then hopefully we'll get a chance to see the video. So
yes.
Normally when a bill is when a bill debate ends, we're normally given about 10 to 15 seconds to vote. Whoever is in the chair will say.
This one had a long time.
Yeah, House Bill 1234. Mr. Clerk, open the roll call. Have all voted who wish. Have all voted who wish. Have all voted who wish. Mr. Clerk, take the record. So maybe 5 or 10 seconds. Okay, they held this one open for as long as it took to get to 60. And after about a minute, when they still didn't have 60 votes, I pulled out my cell phone and I wanted to record the screen. Again, if we were on the House floor, it would have been a lot easier to see what's happening. At the Bank of Springfield Center, it was nearly impossible. So I'm recording the screen, and you can see the last 4 people to get to 60. And Representative Kelly Burke was acting as Madigan's delegate at that time. Madigan, of course, is a speaker, but he can delegate that role to somebody else temporarily.
So can we go back a couple things, because we do want to show that video that Tom has of that the vote, the way that the vote went out, and but I want to mention this. So this is a very contentious issue. It's a bill that's got a lot of problems with it. It's a bill that is opposed by 100 out of 102 states' attorneys. It's a bill that's opposed by the Illinois Sheriff's Association, the FOP State Lodge, the FOP Labor Council, the FOP Troopers Lodge, FOP Lodge 7, which is Chicago. I mean, it's literally opposed by every significant public safety group that you can imagine.
And citizens, too. Again, we talked about the process
Yes.
of committee.
Yes.
So when a bill is in committee, not only do citizens and other stakeholders have the opportunity to testify for or against a bill, but you can also file witness slips. And when these bills change numbers quickly, or when they are added to other bills as a shell bill, I don't know if we need to go into that process or not, but basically when there are maneuverings that make it hard for the public to keep up with what's happening, there still on this bill were 19,000 plus opposition witness slips. 19,000 plus, only 4,000 proponents.
Right.
And they still jammed it through.
Massively opposed. And on top of it, it passed with the bare minimum. Very controversial bill. Lots of informed opposition, meaning the experts who have to deal with the bill, and I want to get to that in a minute, John Cabello, about how you guys have to deal with it, opposed to it. Lots of witnesses, and they do 15 minutes of debate and then hold the roll open. Let's play the tape.
Longer almost than the debate.
Almost. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Let's
this.
play the tape. Let's have our audience watch this.
Have all voted.
They're yelling, "Take the record."
So there's only 56 yeses at this point. It takes 60 to pass a bill.
They called the vote, they take the record. They called the vote, take the record. And they're holding it open to twist arms.
Yep. There's people that voted for that bill that didn't want to vote for that bill.
Miss Representative Leader Durkin, you're out of order.
So they're still only at, I think that's 58 at this point.
Wow.
Have all voted who wish, Mr. Clerk, please take the record.
Wow. So, and Tom, you said that had been going on quite a while. You
About
just
a
did
minute. Yeah. I mean, because I could tell, okay, they're going to hold this thing open. So I want this documented on who are the final votes. But really, because
Who were the final votes?
Well, I know that the last two, from 59 and 60, were Representative Walsh, who's from the Joliet area, and Representative
Yes,
Kifowit.
Larry Walsh, who pretends to be a moderate, by the way.
And then Representative Kifowit from the Aurora area. But really, every yes vote on that was the deciding vote, because
Absolutely.
any one of them could have backed off and kept this from passing.
So I think it's important for my listeners in the DuPage County area to understand that Deb Conroy voted for this bill. Now she wants to be the chief executive. She wants to be the chairman of DuPage County. And so it's something for you to consider. Do you really want somebody who votes on legislation like this in a sham process to boot to be the leader in DuPage County? Do you want to turn our
not
county
to
over?
mention, not to mention that she is definitely making your family unsafe starting January 1st.
Tell us more about that,
crime
John.
the crime that you see today is nothing, absolutely, positively nothing compared to what you are going to see the second that this bill is enacted, which is January 1st of 2023. I mean, right now, if I went out and committed an aggravated battery, I would be held in jail until I could post a bond that more than likely goes by the availability of money, the seriousness of the crime, and if they believe that you're going to be reoffending or you're a threat to society. All that goes out the window January 1st, 2023. So Tom and I get into an argument I take a baseball bat, I beat Tom up, and the police come, I get arrested, I go to jail, I go to court, I tell the judge, yeah, I just had an issue with him. I don't have an issue with anybody else. The judge is going to go, okay, you're out. See ya.
Well,
Absolutely, positively insane.
is this true?
What's going to happen?
The Illinois Sheriff's Association put out a graphic. I found it on the police1.com website. They say here's an example. You own a local store and an individual is causing trouble. The suspect is being loud and yelling obscenities at customers. Police arrive and realize he's disturbing the peace of the store. The suspect will be issued a ticket, a court date within 21 days, and officers will leave. The suspect cannot be forcibly removed, and the store owner is left with the same problem. True?
Correct.
True.
Absolutely. So what do you think is going to happen? That store owner is then going to probably put hands on to get that person out of their store, and there's where more violence will take place. So this is the same thing with trespassing. So let's say I decide to go to Jeanne's house, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to camp in your backyard from now on. And you come out and you say you need to leave this private property. I say, no, thanks. So you call the police. The police come and say, hey, Mr. Cabello, we need you to go ahead and take off. We need you to get off this property. I say, yeah, I don't think so. So they're going to give me a citation, and they're going to say, here's your 21 days to be in court. And then they're going to look at you and they say, sorry, we did what we could. And they're going to get in their car and they're going to leave. What do you think is going to happen to the property owner? Property owner is going to put hands on.
Was this
They're
part of the
going to put
debate?
more people in jeopardy of having violence in their life.
Was any of this part of the debate?
I don't
There
recall
wasn't any debate.
Oh, there wasn't any debate.
Yeah.
Of course.
There wasn't any debate. So you had Patrick Windhorst trying to talk about, asking questions, but they're running the clock out, kind of being nonchalant about their answers. And there is no debate. There was no debate in committee, obviously. When I brought some things up, they were, well, we'll have to wait and see. That's not the legislative intent. That's not they love to say that's not the legislative intent. Well, but that's the way it's written.
So now you've got state's attorneys around the state saying, like Jim Glasgow, Democrat, Will County state's attorney, literally said, if come January 1st, I'll have to release 640 inmates from the jail. 60 of them are charged with murder. I'll have no choice. You've got other state's attorneys now chiming in saying the same thing. Is that true, John?
That is correct. So unless they can get all of these cases before a judge and hope the judge thinks that they're a threat to society, because if the judge does not deem them a threat to society, they're out.
That's right. And what do the police officers say? Because one aspect of the Safety Act is while they kept qualified immunity in place, what they did say is that you can make anonymous complaints against an officer.
Yes.
Yes.
There,
so that stayed in the bill at the final version.
Yes. So I'm not so worried about the complaints against officers. More and more officers are getting body cams, dash cams. It actually proves that the perpetrator was more of the issue than an officer. So it actually is helping exonerate a lot of people. But an anonymous complaint it gets less weight when it goes into internal affairs of the Office of Professional Standards. Okay, well, we really have nothing to go on. You made this complaint. We can look and see if there's any video. If there's not, how can you go any further?
The bottom line, though, if you're a resident, if you're a voter, what this bill does now, law, it makes it harder if you're a law-abiding citizen or you're a law enforcement officer. It makes it easier if you're a criminal.
Exactly, and in fact, I call it the "We Love the Criminals Act." It is not a safety act. In fact, I would like to ask, whose safety are they trying to protect here?
Well, the E stands for equity. I think we should start using the full name and include that part because that's what this is about. It's about equity, more than anything, more than safety. That's what they say. That's what they claim it's about. Another thing, there's been a lot.
There is no equity when a person kills another person. The equity is supposed to be in the justice system to hold that person accountable for what they did. But we have a governor who's released over 64 murders. We have a governor that has released hundreds of thousands of prisoners, violent offenders, because of quote unquote COVID. The narrative is there. The Republicans are not for this. The Republicans are absolutely positively against this, which means to me, you have one party that is definitely there to try to protect you and your family. There's one party there that is definitely trying to make your family see more violence because of what their actions and what they have done and through the actions that they've taken.
So other than obviously voting these Democrats out of office, and that means the whole kit and caboodle of them, I don't care if they didn't vote for this. I think that they all need to go because they also didn't strongly oppose this or get their caucus off of it or slow down the process or make sure that it happened correctly or take into consideration important arguments. I think that this is one of those pivotal bills that you say, that's it. You know, my safety is more important than your political career. And you are in the majority party. You're in a supermajority position, and you didn't vote for my safety. You're out. The reason I bring that up is because some folks have been approached now with, where's the repeal on this bill? Because Glasgow also said that every candidate should be asked whether or not they will repeal this act ahead of time. And so there's been clamoring for a special session for a repeal bill, which I know that there are bills that have already been written to repeal this. And the Democrats that I've heard of conversations that people have had with Democrats saying, well, you know, it's not that easy to do a special session. And after the election, we have a trailer bill that's going to come out and yada, yada, yada. I find this is exactly what they do all the time, is they give lip service to the things after the fact when people start to become aware.
I'm going to stop you there for a second,
Okay.
Jeanne. I apologize.
Yep.
But I'm going to call it for what it actually is. They are lying.
Okay.
They are lying through their teeth. They are bold-faced liars. That's what they are. If they want to do it, they can do it.
That's what I've said.
It's as simple as that.
But again, the leadership in both the House and the Senate has to get behind that. And you have Speaker Welch. I'd be shocked if he would support it. Like I said a few minutes ago, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, they have the ability to put a brick on a bill, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, they're not going to do anything before the election because then it would show how foolish they were in passing it in the first place. I guess it's conceivable that some minor reform might happen, but I'm just as I was trying to digest just the summary of the bill, my head was spinning. All of the changes. I mean, like I said, it just makes the job of our law enforcement professionals that much harder, and that's not what we need. I mean, if you look in Chicago, you've got large vacancies where they need more officers on the street. They've lowered standards. They cannot hire officers because it would just be extremely difficult to work in an already dangerous job with these handcuffs on.
What's your
situation? The
situation?
department that I work for has 350 officers. We are 70 officers down today. We can't find people to come test. We can't find. We've got a lot of officers looking for other jobs. It is a way of defunding the police, just like they wanted. Well, if we can't really defund them, let's find a way of getting less police officers out there.
Well, the good news is this. The good news is that this bill is getting a lot of media. Of course, Fox News has covered it in multiple variations. So fortunately, we're looking like a laughingstock. I will say this: I was in my home state, the state that I grew up in, South Dakota, a couple weeks ago, and my sister got a message from her own state rep there, and he said, "Can you believe what Illinois is doing?" And he had the list of non-detainable offenses from the Safety Act. I mean, just it's absolute insanity. And so we are the laughingstock. Most other states are not doing this. It has to be, something has to give here. And Okay, final words on this, guys. How do we get people to wake up and make a change?
Well, unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to happen until after January 1st, when way more people than whatever should have come in contact with violent criminals, and then they're going to demand justice, even though that person's not even in jail. I think it's going to, unfortunately, take that for people to really see what is going on. We're not out here trying to fearmonger. We're out here trying to educate. And when you have a governor who is auditioning on the national stage and trying to show how far left he is so he can try to become president, and you have the rest of the General Assembly who are tied to the money that he has and hoping that he will take them to Washington with them in some sort of a cabinet job, nothing's going to change. So please do not vote for any Democrat, up or down the ticket. Go straight Republican. We have the ideas that are going to solve these problems. We have the ideas that are going to protect your family, bring down your taxes, and there is no reason in any way, shape, or form to vote for a Democrat this time around.
All right.
Yeah.
That's John Cabello. Thanks a lot, John, for joining us on this call. We appreciate it. Tom, final word on this.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to have John on just for his perspective, both in the legislature and on the beat. And so I think I concur with him that people just have to tangibly see it. I mean, we're talking about hypotheticals, but you can see in other parts of the country where they've been very soft on crime what the effect is. And surely those of us who are watching Chicago news, and now that crime is filtering out into the suburbs where it hasn't been seen to this degree in a long time, if ever, people are going to have to experience it, sadly. And so elections have consequences.
They sure do.
Ideas have consequences.
Yes.
Bad ideas
absolutely.
Have victims. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Okay, so two more topics that I kind of wanted to cover with you since I have you in studio, and it's a rare thing that I get to do that. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the budget. I think that's an interesting topic, and then we're going to turn to a specific issue dealing with women. Sure. Okay, on the budget, I find it interesting. We just passed the $46 billion budget. Now, when I showed up, and you were already there a couple of years, we were down around $30 billion budgets for the general revenue funds.
That's, 30, 32, something.
Right.
Or maybe when I started, it was around 29,
I think it was. Yeah. So we're talking about a 50% increase in,
well, we
a
have
decade.
so many more people in Illinois.
A decade.
I mean, Illinois' population's grown by that much, right?
No, but you're talking $15 billion more.
Yeah.
Declining population in a decade, 50% more.
Right.
I mean, part of it is a broken budget process.
Well, but the biggest line items all have seen massive increases that we have been saying for years are unsustainable. So the pension costs have continued to balloon, Medicaid costs have continued to balloon, and then you've got spending on K through 12 and higher education. Those are, I think, the top 3 or 4 budget line items. And so they've all had enormous increases in that time. And that's why you see that number.
So you and I served on pension committee together. And you and I were both there for that historic pension reform bill that I knew within 2 years was going to be found unconstitutional. Sure enough, it was. And subsequently, they have done marginal stuff, and nothing is significant. Which the most significant thing they could do, and I think you would agree, without having any constitutional problem, would be to require new employees go into a modernized system, either a hybrid or just a pure 401k style system that we already have in place for state university retirement folks who self-selected.
That's right.
Right. So we could do that without any constitutional issue, mandate that new employees move into that system. And we've lost a decade of just doing that simple move into a modernized system.
Well, and part of the reason for that is those pension systems, they need that influx of new money.
Which tells you what? It's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
So tell us anything more to add about the pensions. We're still underfunding them based on actuarial information. Statutorily, we make our $5-6 billion commitment, but truthfully, if you were supposed to put them on the right trajectory to be fully funded, you would need $5 billion more a year. Where would we ever get that?
Good question. I mean, so if you look at the stock market, I mean, I don't know when this is going to air, but the market has taken a little bit of had a little bit of a correction recently. But if you look over the last 10 years, market performance is historic. I mean, we've had a historic bull run, but you look at the funding levels of these pension plans, and they've pretty much stayed flat. So that should tell you that something is broken. Either they're not returning what they expect to, or the outflow is just so large that it's not growing as those funds should if in a bull market.
I'm glad you brought up the stock market decline from yesterday. So we're actually taping this on Wednesday, September 14th, and yesterday on the 13th, it was the celebratory party at the Biden White House for his inflation reduction bill that he signed off on. At the same time, it was announced that August inflation year over year was 8.3%, and also the stock market immediately upon notice of that it went down 1,200 points. 1,200 points, the largest decline since 2020, and that decline was simply precipitated from the COVID lockdown that happened. But it's a significant decline, and somebody said, a commentator on in the news said this, and I don't remember who, said the average person, actually I think it was Rick Santelli, the average person who lost in their portfolio in that one day, $14,000 for that 1,200-point decline. Guess who doesn't ever lose?
Yeah, the pensioner.
The pensioners in the state of Illinois never lose because they are absolutely...
Well, the state of Illinois
they're
loses.
insulated, they're protected.
The state of Illinois loses because who is backing up those funds? Pull out your driver's license. Where's your residency? If you're an Illinois resident, you are the one who is going to, or at least you're the one expected to fulfill those pension obligations. But if you're receiving a pension or you're due to receive a pension, there is a guaranteed 3% cost of living adjustment that compounded.
Right.
Cost of living
so
adjustment.
You're never losing money. Your portfolio is never going down.
So there's no skin in the game.
No skin in the game.
Right.
It's the height of unfairness, actually, when they want to talk about fair and things being equitable.
Yeah.
There's nothing equitable or fair about that.
So I'm 47 years old as I've been on the campaign trail, and I would talk to public employees, and look, the law is what the law is. I mean, a lot of these employees have to be in the system whether they like it or not.
Right.
Some are not given all of this information. Okay. So when I show up asking for their vote or trying to talk to them about this issue, immediately there's a little bit of a feeling of personal attack. Well, I'm attacking you. No, the system itself is not sustainable. And I point to an article that was published in my high school newspaper, of all places, 29 years ago, and it talked about the looming teacher pension crisis. And the student reporter interviewed a math teacher who said, this works great, the system as it is right now, early retirement, no penalty, all this sort of thing, works great if you're about to retire. This should concern the younger teachers in the future. And I show that quote to teachers or other public employees that I talk to, and then say, you know who he was talking about back in 1993? He was talking about you.
Yeah.
This should concern the younger teachers in the future because there isn't going to be the money there. And by the way, in the article, it said that the teachers' retirement system was $7 billion underfunded. And today now we're around $75 billion underfunded.
That's just in teachers.
And just which is the largest of the five state pension plans. Again. So,
but overall, we're about $144 billion.
In a best case scenario.
That's the best case scenario. Right. A lot of people, like Moody's, puts it up around $300 billion. 300
It's not
billion.
Pretty. It's not pretty. But,
it's not pretty. It's not pretty. Okay, another topic I wanted to get to.
Well, but before we get off the budget, so
let's talk about budget.
Now mailers are starting to show up in people's mailboxes, and I just got an email from a constituent asking about a candidate for office who is being accused of voting against funding state police. Right? Just earlier in the program, we were talking about defunding police, and, a lot of people on our side, and just middle of the road, common sense people, they want law enforcement. They want safe neighborhoods. Okay. So of course we want to support law enforcement. Well, gee, why would that one candidate vote against funding the state police? All right. Here's what you need to know.
Okay.
The budget is a yes or no vote. The $42 billion, it's a yes or no vote.
46 billion.
40, whatever. Okay. Sorry.
That's
going back
okay.
a few years.
Yeah.
Okay. But whatever that budget happens to be, 2,000, 3,000 pages, whatever it happens to be, again, it's negotiated behind closed doors, and it drops in a shell bill, which means it doesn't go the normal 3-day process. Witnesses can come in, testify for or against it, give and take. Lawmakers can say, do we really need to fund, line item, blah, 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 the Caterpillar Hall of Fame in,
it's not like your city council.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
It's not your city council budget negotiations.
No.
Not
you
at
get
all.
an up or down vote, almost no negotiation, very little debate. And so that's why you're starting to see these attacks come out. So-and-so doesn't want to fund domestic violence shelters. So-and-so
doesn't want to
voted to defund breast cancer research. So that's all in the bill.
Yeah.
It's all in the
my
bill.
favorite.
Yes or no, up or down.
Didn't want to fund rape kits for police for investigation.
As if that's a single bill that you're voting on, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just be aware that how you're getting played.
That's a really good
there.
point.
Now,
really good
what
point.
else is in the budget? Pay increases for the lawmakers.
Yes.
Doubling of their district office budget. Doubling of their district office budget in an election year where the district lines are going to be redrawn. So at your expense, or, with your tax dollars, your incumbent state lawmaker is sending out more mail or hiring more staff. Maybe they're going out and doing constituent outreach, talking about how great,
there's
so-and-so is, and,
yeah.
how, these are the 5 or 6 bills that I sponsor that everybody loves. Aren't I
That's
great?
right. So when you get that mail in from your state legislator, be careful because a lot of it is official mail paid at your expense for them to tell you how great they did on this one little minuscule issue that it was really, again, an up or down vote is like just nonsense. They may have had nothing to do with that bill.
Yeah.
And they just voted for it, and it's small. Yeah, it's just embarrassing how we do things here. And by the way, there's plenty of state legislators elsewhere that have no office staff. They get nothing,
right?
To support their efforts. And in Illinois, it's like it's a sport here. It's a business, actually. Politics is a business here in this
With your
state.
money.
With your money. Yep. Yep. Great. Okay. One last thing that I wanted to have you in on because I thought this was kind of an interesting. To me, it was very interesting. It was the 50th year anniversary of Title IX, and a state rep was running a resolution in support of the Title IX bill. And in that resolution, she talked about supporting women. And so the question came up from another colleague about, well, what is a woman? Why don't we roll the tape?
All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And opinion in chair, the ayes have it. And the resolution is adopted. At the bottom of page 16 in the calendar of the order resolutions, we have House Resolution 733, Representative Stewart. Representative Stewart is recognized.
Thank you. I don't know if everyone is aware, but this year, on June 23rd, will be the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX, which has made quite a big difference in the lives of women and folks all across the country, and also right here in the state of Illinois. And so this is to recognize the importance of that and the impact that it's had. And because of the importance that this has had on the lives of so many, I would like to ask that all members of the body be added to this resolution.
Any discussion? Representative Wilhire is recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
She indicated she will.
Representative Stewart, I got a couple of questions, just on a couple on definition and then some other stuff. In paragraph 4, it refers to LGBTQI+, and I'm a little behind on the last part of that. Can you define what that is?
It's the treatment of everyone. It's an umbrella term.
Specifically what it stands for.
LGBTQI plus.
Yes.
So lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, I believe queer, intersex, and anything else.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted on that part. In paragraph 6, it talks about women had less access to scholarships and were excluded from male programs. Is this resolution advocating for biological men or biological women participating in?
This is pointing out to the fact that
sports?
when people like my own mother were going through school, they were not allowed to enter certain programs, and that she had to go against her college just in order to major in mathematics and statistics. That's what this points to, is this disgusting history of our country holding women back and not allowing us opportunities.
Okay. Also in that same paragraph, it mentions woman. Could you give us a definition of a woman?
I really am just shocked that there's opposition to supporting something like Title IX, which has given opportunities to people who have been held back for generations. And
This
your
isn't
line of
opposition to Title
questioning,
IX.
your line of questioning is offensive. Offensive.
Okay. Well, you still didn't answer the question. What's the definition of a woman? We can't have it both ways. If we're going to do specific legislation for women, I think we need to clearly define it.
Title IX.
Nobody is in opposition to Title IX. Title IX is protecting girls' sports, and we're all for that.
Title IX is protecting anybody who identifies as female.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So,
Well, we have a Supreme Court justice who couldn't answer the question,
what is a
what
woman?
is a woman either? So,
See no further discussion.
we're going to put state reps on
See no further discussion. Representative
hold them to a
Stewart.
higher standard? I don't know.
It's just remarkable, though, that that they can muddle a Title IX resolution, and everything there is a virtue signal to their social constructs.
Well, and again, it's undermining the purpose of the law in the first place.
Absolutely.
To give women and girls opportunities that they didn't otherwise have, and now we are reversing course in this at the federal level and the state level.
Such a sad commentary, but the way I see it is, if you cannot be honest about male and female anatomy, if you can't be honest about this discussion, then you're not going to be honest in any other discussion. I personally don't want you voting on anything for me. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Tom, thanks a lot for joining me on The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. We've covered a lot of territory. I really appreciate your expertise coming in and talking about the process of how legislation is passed, because the process itself is flawed, and then you get flawed policy behind it. That is the biggest problem. They're not listening to the people. They're not listening to the experts. They are just simply doing what they want to do for their own political purposes. That's how I see it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, great.